Good afternoon and welcome to Lunchtime Live with me, Ros Astengo. This is Radio Gibraltar. Earlier on this year, the Minister for Transport and Traffic announced the biggest shake-up in the Gibraltar Highway Code in 20 years. The winners, the Minister said, will be the cyclists and pedestrians. And like the new UK model, it will create a new hierarchy of road users, with those most vulnerable at the top of the pyramid and those that cause the most harm, like cars, at the bottom. So far, we've seen the UK-style point system introduced for traffic offences here in Gibraltar, new rules on undertaking, while overtaking cyclists now require a minimum 1.5 metre distance. Anyone breaking the law will be fined £300. Joining me live in the studio now is the Minister for Transport and Traffic, Paul Balban. Thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you, Ross. Good afternoon.
As always, you've generated quite a lot of debate on social media. Let's say many hundreds of comments generated by the 1.5 metre distance. We will sort of dissect that very shortly, but generally your overview, what's your view of some of what you've seen written?
Well, I seem to have this effect on people. I think the ministry itself has an effect on people. I think when we touch, people's cars and modes of transport, I think it does bring up a lot of issues, a lot of concerns, and people are very wary because they think that obviously we're out there to stop, the car on the road. A lot of comments, which I think is a good thing. I think we need to keep the debate alive. I think that, there's a lot of interest, and it's important to note, there's a lot of comments which make little sense, a lot of comments which are totally unreasonable, and some comments which are useful, and those are the ones I take on board to see where we go from here. But as I said, I think it's important that people have a say, they can express themselves, and I think this is what a democracy is all about.
The first thing that struck me when I saw the 1.5 metre minimum distance rule when overtaking a cyclist, speed cameras capture speed, they don't capture distance. And people, like police officers, aren't infallible. And without the science of a technical device, it's going to be a matter of perception. So unless there's actual contact between a cyclist and a motorist, how is this law ever going to be enforced?
Well, this is a lot of common sense, and it requires a lot of discretion from those who are policing these laws. So 1.5 meters is the distance that is required when overtaking a cyclist. Having said that, there are situations where cars may overtake slightly closer and has no consequence whatsoever on the cyclist. So really what we're looking out for is really signs of dangerous overtaking, whereby cyclists can easily be thrown off the bicycle, lose their balance, and cause them to have a collision or an accident. So we need, sensible. If you look at the distance, in fact, if we are on our heights, because our arms are more or less half of our heights, we're talking about a distance of more or less double an arm's length is what we're looking at. I've been overtaken by cars where I can literally tap their chassis with an open palm. That means they're 30 centimeters away from me. So I think that's what we need to curb, the flagrant abuse, and really carelessness behaviour towards cyclists and other road users.
We'll talk about the size of the roads in a moment. I want to just ask you a question. How many accidents have been caused as a result of a car overtaking a bicycle in Gibraltar?
I wouldn't be able to tell you that because I haven't sought those statistics. So again, it's a question I could not reply to.
Okay, I thought maybe that statistic might have informed this rule, but...
No, this is a truly preventative measure. This is to try to avoid, this is prevention and public safety. And what we're trying to do is, we know that there are more cyclists on the roads, there are more e-scooters on the roads, there's a lot of traffic on the roads, and what we're trying to do is to help prevent the potential for accidents.
Okay, I spoke to one cyclist this morning and I asked him what he thought about the 1.5 metre rule. He said, I welcome the intention to make me safer on the road, but the execution is flawed. What this regulation has achieved is to have motorists vilify and demonise me as a cyclist now. I will have potentially a row of cars behind me, angry and cursing at me and making me feel uncomfortable and nervous. Does this regulation create more anxiety on the road and the potential for more conflict?
It's a shame if it does so, because the intention of this legislation is totally the opposite. Now, normally these things wear down very, very quickly. I mean, obviously, when you do something new, a new legislation is announced, there's always, a backlash. And this is common not only in Gibraltar, but everywhere else in the world when regulations are set up. So you'd expect, I have people shouting at me, today especially, I get people shouting at me, oh, this and that. Well, it comes with what I do. But as I said, it is a shame that people feel that way, but this is, at the end of the day, all it's doing is raising awareness, helping people to recognize that the road is for everyone. It's for pedestrians, it's for cyclists, it's for cars, it's for lorries, it's for buses. This is about sharing, Ross. This is not about this stretch of streetscape is mine exclusively for my driving pleasure or my cycling pleasure even.
Of course, we're just looking at consequences and things that people have brought up, concerns that people have brought up. With traffic travelling at a much slower pace, because you might get a cyclist now in the middle of the road, which I know it's something that you are looking to introduce into the highway code, the same as it's been brought into the UK, except that in the UK, it's in the case of where the road is narrow. Now, in the UK, they have very wide roads, but they do occasionally have narrow roads, of which that rule would apply. Here in Gib, pretty much everywhere is a narrow road. So the consequence of that is that you could have a row of cars behind a cyclist, which in turn is going to create greater congestion on the roads, greater pollution on the roads. Any comment on that?
It won't be a possibility, it'll be a reality. Take Lovers Lane, Linewall Road. I mean, there's no way that a car can safely overtake a cyclist along that road. If a cyclist feels threatened or is being tailgated and feels that they want to pull up, if they pull up, that car will overtake. Obviously, and that will endanger them. So this is why a proficient cyclist should be able to recognise.
But what about in Roja Road, a main artery, let's say? It's a main artery. Lovers Lane isn't a main artery, really. You could have the potential for sort of going back. I know one of the aims you had as Minister for Traffic and Transport was to reduce traffic on the road. I mean, does this have the reverse effect?
You see, cyclists, when the road is wide, they should be sitting or cycling on the right hand side, on the part of the road which is closest to the pavement. They should leave a reasonable amount of space between themselves and the pavement, but the mainstay of the road should be available for cars who wish to overtake. Actually taking control of the centre of the road only happens when you're in narrow roads or on approach, for example, to a roundabout. If you're in a roundabout and you want to keep on going straight, but there's a car to your left that wants to take a right, the chances are they could knock you off your bicycle because they're going to go ahead of you. So what you would do as a preventative measure, precautionary measure, is to take control of the road, stay in the middle, and that way the car stays behind you. You then continue straight and that car will then
So
turn
you
to the
accept
right.
that is the consequence of that, is that there's going to be greater traffic.
Slower
traffic.
There may be slower traffic on the roads, but again, we need to be sensible. I mean, does that mean that we really want to overtake a bicycle at the expense of the person's safety? I mean, I have seen comments on social media, how are we going to overtake bicycle up Prince Edward's Road? I mean, if you're really, really intending on overtaking a bicycle up Prince Edward's Road, I think we're all in trouble. I mean, even the pedestrian.
Okay, I'd like to pick up one comment made on social media, Jolan, and because a lot of people have made very valid comments, and I'd like to put some of these to you. He says, if a cyclist gets within 1.5 metres of my car, will they get a £300 fine? Now, one example, when you're going down Queensway or when you're going down Roja Road and the traffic's really heavy and you're travelling at a snail's pace at 10 kilometres an hour, whatever, and then a cyclist goes whizzing by, because obviously they don't get caught up in the traffic. If they come right next to my car and they, so close that they can touch the car mirror, will they get a fine because they haven't observed the 1.5 metre rule?
No, this does not apply to cyclists. Remember, we have to realise that the vulnerable individual on the road is the pedestrian, is the cyclist. So what you can't do is, when a car is overtaking a bicycle, they do so at much greater speed than the bicycle is travelling at. When the car is driving slowly, then obviously the cyclist cannot be expected to stay behind, a car which could be emitting fumes, could be a diesel. I mean, you'd expect, and because the traffic is going to be going at a very slow speed, it is acceptable for a bicycle to overtake and try to keep to the same lane, because if a bicycle goes onto the opposing carriageway, they then can also pose a threat to the oncoming vehicle, who may need to veer off the road and cause them to have an accident. This is not just about cyclists. I mean, this is about general road behaviour and asking cyclists to be respectful, just as we're asking, motor vehicle users to be respectful.
Well, I think, looking at a lot of the comments which you yourself have read, a lot of people want to see a level playing field, and obviously cyclists are more vulnerable than those in cars, but cyclists aren't immune to breaking rules as well. So there's many who will who say that cyclists are breaking laws on a regular basis, going through red lights, they're going through pedestrian crossings. I've got a few comments here. Someone saying road safety is for everyone. Many feel cyclists get away with ignoring rules motorists have to abide by. So your focus is very much on motorists breaking rules, but what about cyclists who break rules?
No, I mean, they are absolutely right. This is not about, cyclists or e-scooters getting away scot-free. I mean, this is about, it is illegal to go past a red light, not just for a car, it's for a cyclist, for a motorbike, for an e-scooter. So they need to respect the law. Now, the legislation is in place. The Highway Code dictates that you cannot go past.
Will they get on-the-spot fines?
They would if a policeman stops, sees them overtaking or going through a red light.
Yeah.
They will be stopped and they will be fined. I mean, last week, in fact, the RGP were sitting outside the old Bayside School, finding e-scooters and bicycles who were coming against the flow of traffic towards the Sunday roundabout. I mean, as the police rightly say, I mean, they can't be everywhere, but they can be anywhere. So I think we need to have that respect. The police have got a massive task on their hands. We have provided them with the tools that they need, which is the legislation. So now they're empowered to be able to fine if they see someone breaking the rules. But they need to police. We legislate, they police. So no, but people are absolutely right. These rules apply for everyone.
But do you feel that there is, many, not everyone obviously, but cyclists who persistently offend by going through red lights as though the highway code doesn't apply to them? I mean, I've stood at zebra crossings many times, and cyclists will just go by, and I will have to wait for them to go by before I cross the road. I mean, where's the campaign to improve that behaviour?
Yes, I mean, I see cyclists doing that all the time, just like I see cars and motorbikes doing that all the time. In fact, where I see this most is when cars, motorbikes and cyclists, everyone is sitting at those traffic lights, for example, at Waterport Road, and then instead of looking at the traffic light which corresponds to them, which is the one for vehicles, they're looking at the pedestrian warning, the counters, and when it comes down to zero, they're shooting off on a red, and that those lights by default allow an extra 2 seconds of dead space to allow a pedestrian to get to the other side safely. And I mean, it happens constantly, but we cannot say. I mean, I agree. There's a lot of cyclists that do this, a lot of e-scooters, and I get extremely angry. I will tell them when I see. I mean, I've just seen 2 cyclists, along Queensway on the pavement as I cycled to the studio. I can't keep quiet. I'm sorry. I told them, look, you're giving cyclists a bad name, because they are. Just like those cars that rush and speed at 2 o'clock in the morning and overturn at Devil's Road are giving car drivers a bad name as well. I think this is about being sensible, being respectful, and everyone should play their part in this respect.
Where are the cycle lanes, Minister?
Well, the cycle lanes are hopefully on their way. I mean,
we've been hearing that for many years, though. Where are they?
I'll tell you where we are at the moment. Okay, we have prepared a cycling strategy, which is the backbone of what we're doing. That follows off from the STTP, and that actually lays down the rules, which will be that's ready for Cabinet to approve. It'll then go to DPC, and it'll lie within DPC for future developers to be able to see where our bicycle lanes are going. We also have already a document which will be released in due course. We actually specify, you can actually see where our bicycle lanes are going to be. And for those that think that Gibraltar is not big enough for bicycle lanes, I mean, they've got something coming. Because
why is it taking so long, though?
Okay, I'll explain why. The reason, this is not about building a tower of 20 floors where you have a defined footprint. This is about something which encompasses the whole of Gibraltar. Now, Gibraltar, as you know, a lot of it is under construction. We have developments everywhere. The cycle lane takes part of pavements. There's issues with parked cars. There's issues with buildings, with construction sites. So it's not as easy, and obviously the links and how the bicycle lanes actually connect themselves to other stretches of bicycle lanes. So this is like a massive jigsaw puzzle with a lot of missing pieces, and there are some places in Gibraltar which we need to find that missing link to be able to provide that continuity, because it is important to have a network. What is useless is to have a stretch of cycling like we have across the runway, whereby a cyclist gets on the bicycle lane and comes off it within a kilometre, and then back into the jungle, into the road. So what we want is that network needs to continue for it to be meaningful. That's why it takes so long. Should
the public be confident in what the government's doing in terms of the cycling routes strategy? Because obviously we'll remember the Linewall Road episode where the road was partially closed to allow that. That didn't work. So how can the public engage with what you're doing so that when you do make these announcements, you do have, the backing of the public, or are we just going to have to like it and lump it, whatever it is you give to us?
I think we'll have to live with the constant comments about Line Wall Road, which keep cropping up. I mean, I think Line Wall Road came before its time. I think we weren't ready for it as a population. In fact, had it come sooner during COVID, it may have even been a different story. I disagree. When we say it's a mistake, I don't think it was a mistake. I think there were elements of it that needed tweaking, elements that were not correct, but it was a good basis. I mean, but I agree that it wasn't the right time, so it's out. But I think what we're trying to do here, Ross, is we're not going to jeopardize, or we're not going to, outcast the car to give space to the bicycle. What we're talking about is sharing, so we can so pedestrians, cyclists, cars, and all sorts of vehicles can share the limited road space.
Okay, a couple of quick fire questions because we are running low on time already. What's happening with the legislation for insurance for e-scooters? E-scooters travelling more than 25 kilometres an hour are due to have a requirement of insurance, but e-cyclists, I mean, they can go up to speeds of 40 kilometres an hour. What's the situation with insurance for e-cyclists and e-scooters?
No, e-scooters and bicycles cannot go beyond 25 kilometres per hour. As it is, an e-bicycle that goes beyond 25 kilometres per hour is considered a motor vehicle. It needs to be registered with a number plate and it needs to have motor insurance. So it's only bicycles that travel at 25 kilometres or less that do not need.
But the legislation for e-scooters is not yet enacted
because we're taking a bill to Parliament very, very shortly. This has been held back because we had to look at things regarding the MIB in terms of certain insurance issues. But now we're ready in that respect. And there's a few minor things that we need to discuss as a cabinet, and then we're ready to take this bill to Parliament. And what will happen then is that at the moment, e-scooters fall in a lacuna in the law. They came before we had legislation in place, but that bill will actually recognise an e-scooter and carve them out of the definition of a motor vehicle.
Reducing car speeds. Are you still intent on reducing car speeds on all roads to 30 kilometres per hour?
It's a very good thing to help make Gibraltar safer.
Do you have the backing of Cabinet to do something like that?
Many of the roads in Gibraltar are already 30. The Cabinet is happy for us to reduce the safety of roads in Gibraltar. Now, not all roads, deserve a speed limit less than 50. I think we need to apply these rules to the roads. Remember, we're talking about inner urban roads, not the longer roads in the peripheries.
The RGP weren't particularly supportive, though, when you mooted that before.
Well, that's what came across when they, at the time. I mean, I speak with the Commissioner of Police constantly, and in fact, they're very supportive of it. I think it caught them by surprise, but I think that, and it came out badly in that respect. But I'm sure it was not the intention of the police to say that they didn't support, something which is safer for the whole community.
One very final quick question. We've got more initiatives on the way, I understand. Just when can we be having some more from you on traffic initiatives?
Well, I won't commit to a timeline, but we have our new highway code, which is coming very soon, and that will show us all the rules and our shoulds and our shouldn'ts, etc. And we have obviously the cycling strategy, and we have the planning out of those bicycle lanes, which I think we are all very keen to see.
Before I say goodbye to you, are you the Minister for all transport and traffic, or just the Minister for bicycles?
I'm the Minister for Transport completely. I think zones 1, 2, 3, 4 prove it. Everything I do is unpopular, at least from the start. There's been a few popular things like the bus tracker, and perhaps a few other things. But I think when you touch people's sensibilities when it comes to their personal transport, their cars, I think everything sort of goes belly up. But having said that, I'm very confident that people over time and adapt to change, and this is what it's all about. If I had to call my ministry something, it would be the Ministry for Change.
Thank you very much for coming in and talking to us, and maybe we can touch on buses next time. Minister for Transport and Traffic, Paul Balban, thank you.
Thank you very much.